Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's Liberty Nation TV. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and I'm sure it's something that's important to you too. We're going to talk about free speech, why it's important, what's happening with it in the world today. And to help us along with this, we've got once again the amazing Jeff Charles. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Mark. How you doing?
I'm perfect, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So what we're going to start with, let's start with the real basic fundamentals of this. Why is free speech important? What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, the freedom of expression is, to me, the foundation of any free society. The rights of citizens to express their views, whether people like them or not, is one of the most important aspects. I'm a free speech purist, so I think pretty much that, at least in the United States of America, the laws that we have, the few laws that we have regulating speech are all that we need. I know that, like in the UK and in other European nations and also in Canada, they have moral laws regulating speech. And I know that there are individuals and organizations that want to bring more of that to the United States. So to me, I think it's important to stand up for our First Amendment rights.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, my whole view on what free speech is was informed by reading 1984 when I was a wee youngster. And the idea that a group of people would try to actually destroy the very language that we use in the hope of shaping our minds. And that view for me, that really hasn't changed. That's the way I've always seen it. And I see it as exactly that right now. It's a way of shaping how we actually think as opposed to just controlling the words we say. I mean, you obviously read 1984, I'm sure.
Actually, I haven't. I didn't have to read that book in high school. I've been meaning to read it, but I just never have. I know a little bit about it though, and how the tyrannical government in that book used language to manipulate the citizenry. And right now, we see that not so much with our government in the United States, but we do see that in our political system, especially on the left, where they want to determine what can be said and what can't be said, what they can label as hate speech and what speech is okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this comes from political correctness, I think, which I don't know if you're familiar with the history of this, but what would happen in Soviet Russia is people would look around and they'd see that things are not correct. The way they're living is not correct. The way their lives are being run is not correct. And the leaders would turn around and say, sure, but it's politically correct. So it didn't matter that they were starving, that they were having their persons infringed upon, that their right to liberty is just infringed upon because it was politically correct. And we use this now, the term politically correct, as more sort of, well, it's a nice soft way of allowing people to know that we're not going to offend you, that we don't hate you. Whereas its roots, and still its essence now, to me at least, its essence now is exactly the same. It's a way of saying that it doesn't matter that the world is falling to pieces. It's politically correct. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the funny thing is, especially with the left, they'll take something that has a little bit of validity to it, like political correctness. Okay, be polite. Don't be a jerk. That's really all it should be. The problem is that they have taken that and used that basically as a form of tyranny, a form of cultural totalitarianism. Yes. And the United States Constitution, which is interesting, is most of that document is telling the government what it can't do. Why is that? Because we know how tyrannical a government can get, and one of the biggest forms of tyranny is telling people what they can and cannot say. Yes. So while they can't legislate it here in the United States yet, that is what they're moving towards, they do have other ways of influencing the culture by shaming people or using words like racist or bigot to discredit anybody who disagrees with them. So they can see something wrong in society, like, for instance, people from certain Muslim nations coming here that have had issues with terrorism. Most people would say, okay, we need to protect our citizens. Obviously, not all Muslims, the majority of Muslims do not buy into this type of ideology. But even just talking about the ones who do, is politically incorrect. So we can see something that's wrong, but they don't want us to say anything about it because it doesn't fit within their ideology.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's an article up on Liberty Nation, and I chose a picture for it. It's by Onar Am. It's very, very interesting. Viewers, get onto libertynation.com now, read it. It's excellent. But there's a picture there, and it's an elephant, and it's held in place by a tiny little chain, and it's these ties. I mean, I hate to say the ties that bind us, but it's these tiny little chains that they put on that really shouldn't be able to stop an elephant, but they're the cultural ties. They're the ones that shame us into following what they want us to do. I mean, what practical things are happening today? So in what ways can you see that the right to free speech is being limited as an individual in America today?
Yeah, I would say certainly the cultural totalitarianism, which is done through political correctness, is one of the main ways that the left is doing this in the United States. Like I said, they haven't been able to legislate anything like this yet, but they can use other means as far as culturally shaming people. Groups like Antifa last year, all through 2017, showing up at free speech rallies and at pro-Trump rallies, using violence to keep people from expressing their political views. That's really the way they're attacking it now. I think over the long term, the violence is not going to work. And I think that might be why we're not seeing as much of it right now. But if they can do so through the culture, by labeling anybody who expresses a certain point of view as evil or as bigoted or as un-American, then in that way, they can kind of can basically condemn them into irrelevancy. If they compare every single person who says something that they don't like to the Ku Klux Klan, who is marginalized, I think that their hope is that they can put us all in that same bucket. And in that way, they can keep us from saying what we need to say, which is very dangerous because it is tyrannical. And realistically, free speech is like it's a tool. It can be used for something good. It can be used for something bad. There have been great things that have happened in our country, huge evils that have been destroyed because people in the United States were allowed to speak out against that evil. Yeah. So if you take that away from people under the guise of, oh, it's hate speech, or they'll use hate speech as a stepping stone to limit any political views that disagree with their own, we're leaving ourselves open and susceptible to being controlled.
Yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from. In fact, in the UK, these things have moved beyond that point. I mean, we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have the First Amendment. We have a Bill of Rights, and we have what we call an unwritten constitution, which is a series of documents that have been in place since, I guess, the 1215, the Magna Carta era. But really, the things that are happening in the UK now and over the last few years, we have gone to the point that you are fearing now. For example, we have foster parents who are having the children taken away from them for supporting or for voting for a political party. Now, this is a mainstream political party, United Kingdom Independence Party. They won the national election in 2014 in the European Parliament. They're a regular mainstream party. And foster parents had the children taken away from them because they voted for this party. We've had Marcus Meacham, or known as Count Dankula to those of you who follow YouTube a lot, who has spent 2 years going through hell, being dragged through a Kafkaesque nightmare because he made a joke with a pug. I mean, pugs are pretty jokey at the best of times, but he made a joke, and the context was there. He set out the context of why he did it. And what happened was the courts, they couldn't find any evidence that he was a white supremacist, a Nazi, a racist. They couldn't find any. So what they did is they presented to the judge, the prosecution presented to the judge, what they thought was going through his mind when he made the video. And that was used as evidence to actually get the conviction. Utterly crazy. So literally, that is a thought crime. But it's not even a thought that he had. It's a thought that they thought he had. It's madness.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm talking far too much here, Jeff. So that free speech gets me going. Huh? All right. What I want to do is I'm sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, because a lot of people in the United States don't know how it works in the UK, because it's so foreign to us. So people do need to know about that, because it could come here easily.
Yeah, I mean, what I really want to get to this, I love the fact that, what we like to do at Liberty Nation is not just analyze the news, not just present the news, but, sometimes we also like to maybe give some advice, some suggestions on things. And now that doesn't mean we're right. And it's our free speech to say, and it's your free speech to just ignore what we're saying. But what I'd like to know, Jeff, in your opinion, we as individuals, what can we do to stop the tyrannical march against free speech? As individuals, what can we do?
I think in the United States, it's going to require us to continue to educate people on what the First Amendment is, why it exists, what it was fighting against when it was first implemented. In the United States, a lot of millennials have been polled, and studies have shown that a lot of them don't believe that the First Amendment protects what they would call hate speech. And that's scary, because people older than millennials, they understand why free speech exists. As far as millennials go in universities, obviously they're run by leftists who don't approve of free speech purity. So they're not going to teach these kids why it's important that our freedom of expression is protected. So I think in the United States, it's going to take people online and in the media, the left owns the media, but they don't own the media online. And you already have people out there like Dave Rubin, Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro. The list goes on. And a lot of millennials are actually leaning more conservative. And I think that's one of the reasons why they consume a lot of online media. And that's been one of the areas that the left hasn't been able to kick conservatives out of. So I think if we continue to do that, they won't have the success that they want in implementing laws regulating our freedom of speech. So I think in the United States, that would be something that conservatives could do. But I kind of want to put that question back on you, because in the UK, it's a totally different animal, because you already have laws against that. So how would people in the UK or in Canada or in other European nations push this back?
Okay, well, what I like to do is non-compliance. It's really that simple. When somebody says, you shouldn't do this, I'll lean in and I'll be polite. Of course, I'm a polite guy. And I'll say, why? And they say, because this is it. I say, why? And I'll keep questioning them. And I'm not going to go along with something just because a majority feel that I should. Now that takes you very, very close to the line of the law. But if a law is unjust, it's unjust. And I think that ourselves, I don't want to get anybody else in trouble with this kind of stuff, but I think that when a law is unjust, we need to challenge it. And I try and do that in my daily life. As I say, I'm always polite to everybody. It's just the way I was brought up. But I'm not willing to be pushed around by a cultural system that has no love for me and that does not respect me. I wonder, why should I comply with that kind of thing? And I guess that's the message I'd like to put out to people in America is, act within the law, always. But only as much as you have to.
Yeah. That sounds a lot like what Jordan Peterson did, which got him into trouble. But I can see your point. Imagine if enough people did that. If too many people did that for them to be able to stop, I could see how that would affect change.
Yes. All right, Jeff, I really want to thank you for joining us again on this. You're always an absolute pleasure to talk to. Wonderful insight, wonderful brain you've got there in that beautiful head of yours. So thank you for being here, Jeff.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to you at home for watching. Without you, there's no point to this at all. Now, don't forget to use Liberty Nation's new audio feature so that you don't miss your dose of truth and facts, no matter how busy you are. You can get the narrated versions of all of our top stories simply by clicking on the Play SoundCloud or Play in Browser tab in the Listen to the News section on our website at libertynation.com. Remember, the truth is always just 2 clicks away. Thanks for being here.
Liberty Nation. News and commentary, minus the propaganda. LibertyNation.com.